Calls here, John in Los Angeles. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman, one of the questions I have is that is it possible that Donald Trump could be a distraction? We're not concentrating on our next election to get the new Senate and Congress people set in place so we can keep Obamacare and we can veto anything that he tries to do. Is it possible that this could just be the buffoon they put in place in order to keep this circus going, so we will neglect all our duties in electing the next official? Because there's no talk about the next people coming up in the Congress. So we need to take back over the Congress and the Senate as Democrats or independents.
Yeah, let me add that what John is describing is sort of what happened in the year and a half prior to the last November's election, which is Trump was continuously getting coverage, most of it negative coverage, but it still helped him. So your thoughts, Congressman?
Yeah, I think the concern is a valid one, that you want to make sure that that's not happening. The good news I can tell you is that the American people are, again, as you'd expect, way ahead of where elected officials in Washington and government is at on this, and people are just coming out of the woodwork getting ready to run for office. We've got literally hundreds of districts that have people announced, and it's not just a candidate. It's often 5 or 6 or 9 people running in a primary to try to challenge an incumbent Republican in the House or the Senate. So it is happening. People are really active doing races. This happens to be a week where we had about 100 of these folks out here, and I met a bunch the last several days. They are energized. So no one's not keeping their eye on the ball as far as we have to win in 2018 to really put a real goalie in place. And while the president may seem like a distraction, the problem is he still has a lot of real powers. We're dealing with that, and we're dealing with the elections. I think we're walking and chewing gum, but the good news is the American people are on top of this, and they're coming out in record numbers to run for office to represent their communities.
John in Vancouver, Washington. Hey, John, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, I had a question about maybe having term limits for the Supreme Court. I mean, initially a lifetime appointment meant it was when a lifetime was ending before senility set in. And I read something about this, about an 18-year term where it would roll so that in the first and the third year of a presidency, they'd be appointing somebody to the Supreme Court.
Interesting. I haven't heard a whole lot of discussion on that, John. So, our life expectancy has grown a little bit, but I don't know if it's quite at the point where we need to totally revisit this.
Yeah, most of the founders were in their 70s and early 80s when they died.
We're still,
also, it's a constitutional issue, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I'm not quite sure if that's the fight, given the many other fights that we're kind of looking at around gerrymandering, that we're looking around election law, stealing our votes,
the Electoral College,
all the other things that are out there.
Yeah. Gus in New York City. Gus, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, hi, Congressman. Here in New York, we just had an announcement yesterday that a lot of the charter schools in New York are going to be able to hire teachers that don't have a teacher's license. They don't have a degree in education, and that was just announced yesterday. I'm wondering, but that's only for the charter schools that are overseen by the SUNY system. So I think it's about 60 some odd charter schools in New York City. What's your view and the view of the caucus on charter schools? Because I know a lot of Democrats actually support them.
Yeah, I think the language I'd use is slightly different because state-to-state charters are a little different, and in some cases there's public school charters that are completely within the public school system. So I think I like to use it when you have taxpayer funds going to private schools. So when you have the vouchers, which is generally charters in many, many states, but because it's not the same in every state, I use slightly different language. That I think is an attack on the public school system, right, which is the great equalizer. When you take money out of the public school system, Wisconsin is one of the first states in the country to do this. So I know this very well from when I was in our state legislature. Eventually, they cherry pick the students that they're taking. So they don't take kids with any kind of developmental disabilities. They don't take anyone who might be a problem within the school system. They don't take certain types of people. And at the end of the day, you've taken money out of public schools while they're cherry picking students, often who already are attending a private school. And then it becomes really a tax subsidy rather than anything to improve education. And bottom line, their results aren't any better in study after study after study. So I think it's really an attempt to try to take to destroy public schools and that great promise that we have that everyone should have access to a good quality public education.
Yeah. Congressman, we just have 30 seconds. Thoughts on Betsy DeVos?
Awful.
Yeah.
She's one of the worst.
Well, I mean, she's leading the charge.
Even in her confirmation hearing, pretty much admitted if she wasn't a really rich person who gave a lot of money to politicians, she probably never would have been considered because she has absolutely no expertise in public schools whatsoever.
One of the things that I've heard is that one of her main goals is to Christianize our schools. I've seen old quotes to that effect. Well, we're hitting a break here. We'll continue the conversation in a minute. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark in the Thom Hartmann Program. We're coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. We'll be picking up more of your calls right after this. You can reach Congressman Pocan. His website is pocan.house.gov, G-O-V, and his Twitter handle is Rep. Mark Pocan.